Hello and welcome to this special broadcast from Washington, D.C. India and the US are working on a roadmap to have a trade deal which will help the two countries achieve $500 billion in two-way trade. How is this going to be achieved, and how is the current business atmosphere in the US seen by global companies, including those in India? Joining us is someone who watches India-US relations very, very closely. We've got John Chambers with us, somebody who has been the chairman and CEO of Cisco, who headed Cisco for 25 long years. He's the founder of J2C Ventures, someone who's been mentoring many startups. He's also the chairman of US-India Strategic Partnership Forum. John, a person who wears many, many hats. John, exciting times.
It's a pleasure, it is.
Great to be with you.
It's great to be back together again.
Tell me, how do you feel about India-US relations right now? Lots happening between the two countries, intense trade negotiations.
Yes.
How do you feel?
Well, the neat thing is, I always never get distracted from the big picture. What is the North Star? What are the key goals and visions that I see occurring, the market transitions, and what are going to be the outcomes? And so I don't go up and down in day-to-day activities. 20 years ago, I bet that India would be my second headquarters at Cisco. It worked out beyond all belief. 8 years ago at Vibrant Gujarat, I said, India is going on the world stage. They'll be the fastest growing economy in the world. 2 years later, I said it'd be the biggest economy, and said that in front of Prime Minister Modi, as you know, 2 years ago when he was in Washington. If I look at the overall themes, it is getting stronger and stronger. You think when you look at the trends, are we in agreement on a vision and strategy of what our countries can do together? Oh, yes. And you remember how many doubters when we said this will be the most strategic relationship in the world, not on trade, but literally affecting the lives of every citizen, every industry vertical, from defense to new technologies like AI, etc. on it. And if you watch the progress over the last 8 years, it has gotten stronger and stronger each time. So when I talk to my counterparts, be they Indian CEOs or the US side of the house, I was with 8 of them last night, most bullish I've seen on them. Yeah. Everybody's a little bit nervous in the economy. I've been through a number of these ups and downs. So I actually view that as just normal parts of business on how you move forward. Okay. Where we are today, I would be very surprised if the first real tangible, meaningful trade agreement is not between India and the U.S. Both sides are signaling that. Our president here has been very open about he wants to make this happen, and believes that India is a strategic partnership that is very key to our future, and you saw that in the February meetings. So fast forward to today, stock market is continuing to recover. You begin to see startups do well. Funding's a little bit of an issue, but the big picture we haven't lost track of. In terms of the key leaders, they've never been closer together, because it is our currency, if you will, or power is about literally our track record together, the relationships we form, and trust. And people really like working with each other. They can almost finish each other's sentences. I've got to listen carefully to take out the dialects to see if that was the U.S. side talking to the Indian side.
Right. Great to hear that. And John, as we walk here in Washington, D.C., it's great weather today. What I would also like to ask you about your bets on India.
Yes.
You're constantly monitoring, mentoring different startups in India, in the United States, and across the world. Today, how many of John Chambers' bets are directly or indirectly linked to India?
I've never had it asked exactly that way. I've got 24 major bets currently going on. I've had a pretty good track record of the last 2.5, 3 years in the venture industry, which has been tough. I've had 3 major M&A transactions, several startups, including most recently Bipple's company Rubrik, which has been a decacorn, grow in cybersecurity. Out of the total 24, I would say probably 60% have Indian, directly or indirectly, diaspora at the key leadership positions. Engineering is a huge background, and India produces 1.2 million engineers a year from a democracy type of approach. It's all AI and it's all cybersecurity. Average growth rate's probably 40%.
What are some of the big themes you're watching out for in 25? Themes which will be disruptive, and themes which will define companies and their growth?
Well, in terms of things that will be disruptive, we called this 8 years ago when we said, artificial intelligence will change the way you work, live, learn, and play, and people couldn't even spell it then. And if you remember, that's an instant replay from 1993 at Cisco when I said the internet would change the way you work, live, learn, and play. And people said, John, you move around zeros and ones, allowing texts to talk together. And no, it wasn't. It would change every aspect of our lives as we've seen. AI will be even more. We said that together on the last interviews we've done. Now you're seeing AI start to be implemented. So I think those companies are going to be successful, regardless if they're a technology company, a energy company, a transportation company, a manufacturing company. We use AI as a key part of their architecture. Those that do it well will probably grow productivity at 7 to 10% per year. Your viewership knows what that means in terms of earnings per share, and I think that will occur for a decade. Disruption is going to be pretty dramatic. 70% of the Fortune 500 is not on that list 10 years from now. A number of the startups will fail, but those that are successful are going to do so well. And what is unique about what we're doing here at this conference is we're looking about how our countries work together on all aspects. How do you bring startups into space? How do you bring them into defense? How do you have large company relationships? How do we do manufacturing together? How do we outline a vision of trade that is a win-win and fair to both sides? I think India is our best partner in the world, and absolutely the most strategic partnership for our future here in the United States.
How do you think India is poised for growth, John, considering we're in the middle of a lot of geopolitical tensions?
Yes.
There is a superpower rivalry between US and China going on right now.
Yeah.
The China +1 space is full of competition. The competition is between India, Vietnam, Cambodia, Indonesia. So it's not easy. It's not obvious for companies to go to India. So how do you see India currently in the midst of all these tensions and also issues at play?
So in terms of the sequence you raised it in, I think India is the best positioned by far. Let's not underestimate 1.4 billion people, average age, very, very young, tremendous workforce, great demographics for the next century, not just the next 30 years. Amitabh Khan, I think today said India would be, 37 billion by 2047. I don't know if it's 2045, 2050, but you are on those ballparks, and it will become the largest economy in the world. I think the U.S. and India, by working together, the U.S. economy will grow faster than we by ourselves. India will as well. India is the largest democracy, and we are the oldest democracy. The two of us together, I think, can finish each other's sentences in terms of the direction, and there's trust. So I think India is very well positioned. Nothing in life is a certainty, but out of all the countries in the world, India controls its destiny the best. I've got to give a tremendous amount to Prime Minister Modi. You know my views on the man. He's in the top 3 leaders I've ever met in my life. I trust him completely. His vision and strategy is excellent. And will there be some bumps along the way? As many people on the government side in India, my friends in India would say, of course, there are always bumps. But we never lose track of our North Star of where we're going to go. And friends will occasionally disagree, but we are in agreement on the big issues. So I think India is better positioned than anyone else. I'm the biggest bull in India, as you know, for almost 2 decades, but very bullish since the Prime Minister came into power. And if I were betting on one country, I've said it, I'd bet on India. If I were betting on 2, I'd bet on India twice. I would actually bet 3 times now. Of course, I believe in the U.S., but the U.S. and India is where I'm putting my bets in terms of economy.
Right. John, if there were certain areas or sectors in India that you would be most bullish about right now, what would those be?
I think it is technology. I think India is learning how to do startups, and candidly, if you were to go back to when I did my bet on India being my second world headquarters at Cisco, they didn't have startups. I mean, it wasn't even in the vocabulary. And yet some of the very early startups out of the IITs have done well. 2 of them are my own companies. If you look at what you've seen from Mamesh at Unifor, they're the largest enterprise pure AI foundation play there is. 250 million ARR, growing at 70% year over year. You look at a small startup like you're seeing from Saket with Safe Securities, and it is growing at over 100% year over year at a tremendous ramp up. In terms of skill and quality of players, they're growing 100% per year for 2 years in a row, now 3rd year, and their productivity is increasing so fast, they've literally not added headcount. So you're talking about ability to use AI to make a difference on it. So what am I most bullish about? The technology sector, but different than before. You and I would discuss the technology sector, and then we'd talk manufacturing, then we'd talk energy. All of those are tied tightly together. Every industry will have a core AI base, and that's the biggest thing, back to your question you asked earlier. The biggest change that will occur by the end of 2025, most all companies will not just have a strategy for AI, they'll be way into their implementation. If you're thinking about investing in a company that doesn't have a good strategy and doesn't already have 4 or 5 major segments of their business well on the way to implementing with AI, you might want to rethink about investing in that company.
All right, on that note, we're going to take a small break, John, but this interview is getting very interesting, and we'll tell our viewers to come right back. Welcome back. You're watching a special edition of our show, Global Lens, from Washington, D.C. And with us right now is John Chambers, Chairman Emeritus of Cisco, founder J2C Ventures, and Chairman of US-India Strategic Partnership Forum as well. Let me also ask you about the India-US trade negotiations.
Yes.
Now, we're learning that the two countries are close to an interim agreement, and possibly that may be signed by the end of this month as well. Just an early harvest deal, while a larger one is done later. What is the United States, as someone who's watched successive US administrations, what do you think this current administration is looking from India as far as this trade deal is concerned?
They just want a fair trade deal both ways. And the difference is, I've watched the U.S. and India negotiate trade deals for many years, the U.S. with other countries. The basics is, let's just do what is fair both ways. And I think we have proper respect for each other. We all understand the win that could occur here from both sides. From the Indian and the U.S. side, I don't hear well, it'd be good, but here's the problem. Or it would be very good if only this. The if and buts aren't there. Everybody wants to find a way to do it, and they trust each other. And they're very candid. Will they always agree? Of course not. Our leaders really get along great, and I'll start there with Trump and Modi. Their chemistry is very good. They're very candid with each other, huge amount of respect. But that's true of each of the cabinet members on each side. Sitaraman was here a couple weeks ago. I saw her at the Hoover Institute at Stanford, then had a chance to have dinner with her and a number of business leaders from U.S. and India as well. There's an understanding of why this partnership is so important both ways. Your government leaders are coming over, and business leaders, and building relationships here. And if you watch, the U.S. is doing the same. We had last year 425 individual programs and spatial sessions with U.S. ISPS alone in terms of each of the states and each of the opportunities to work together. We are active in every state in the U.S., all 50, and all 29 states in India. That's why this relationship is going to be the one that I think transforms the future.
Right. But one point that we keep hearing is that India wants to keep agriculture, especially items like wheat, maize, rice, dairy, out of the trade deal because it's very sensitive to farmers. Also, we want 0 for 0 tariffs, but the US wants to maintain a tariff line of 10% on Indian goods. Do you feel there could be any change from that front, and will the current US administration be all right with a deal which keeps agriculture out?
Well, first of all, I'm not in the middle of those trade negotiations, nor do I have the skills. Secondly, both groups are very competent, and both groups are saying how do they win together and how do they think through it in terms of the direction. The cameraman did a great job. He didn't panic when that guy almost ran over you. I was about to pull you aside in the process, but they'll work through this. Clearly, we in America understand that a huge percentage of your population is involved in agriculture, and it's very much small farms, etc. Also involved in ways that we both win. So this is where I think we leave the negotiation to the professionals. Right. All I think our countries both want is let's get a deal that is fair and good for both sides. Right. That will happen. I feel completely confident of it.
Any areas where you feel that India can do more to get more business, have more companies invest in the India story?
Yes, it's doing what India is already doing. When I said India would be the fastest growing economy in the world, and I said that 8 years ago, 7.4% GDP growth. That's the envy of everyone. Secondly, I was at the major financial conference, Milken Conference last year and this year, talking about U.S. and India. I said, double down in India and double down in India. It couldn't be more accurate. I think creating the right environments, especially for startups to grow and grow even faster is important. But I see the Prime Minister and his team continuing to make good progress there. I think what we've got to do, and I think your leadership clearly gets it as well as the U.S., you can't just continue the status quo. You've got to adjust to the changes. You've got to move with tremendous speed. Those countries who do and those companies that do will break away. So what I found the best way to really get a great partnership is what? Rather than saying, here's what I want, what is important to you? How do I help you achieve it?
Right.
And then here's what's important to me. Here's where I need the help. And I think our organizations have a huge amount of trust in moving absolutely that way.
Right. Now, when it comes to manufacturing, Donald Trump's plan seems to be, as of now, his focus is Make in America. Do you think in the current environment, we can actually expect more investments coming in from the United States into manufacturing in India, or is that unlikely?
Well, I think on the bigger picture, and the trade negotiations will navigate through this, just using high tech as an example, almost every major semiconductor is designed in part in India, and they'll be manufacturing there in India by the large players. There are some industries that are very much a win-win by doing it together on it overall. Do I think we'll increase manufacturing jobs here in the U.S.? Absolutely. And I think it's very important to a large section of our economy to be able to do so. But I don't think it's a win-lose or one yes and the other no. I think you're going to see both manufacturing sectors grow. You know my view on China. You and I probably know China almost as well as any of your leaders do, and as many as the American leaders do as well. I was with Wang Laboratories, made a huge bet on China in 1995, outsourced manufacturing there. It was a win-win for us for 2 decades. It became a win-lose, and it was the China wins at the expense of the U.S. That's why you're seeing many of the high tech, but also other manufacturing jobs look for other homes. It isn't just an issue of cost, although you've got to be cost competitive on a global economy. It's, do you trust your supply chain? Is there an understanding how both sides win on it? And how do you find areas that you can compromise on to achieve the end results? So I think you'll see the same thing in manufacturing. Right. Will the jobs in manufacturing in the U.S. increase? Absolutely. Will the jobs in manufacturing in India increase? Yes. Yeah. Could India displace China as the world's top manufacturer? Yes. And can the U.S. be an integral part of that as well as creating jobs here? The answer is yes.
But how worried are you about the U.S.-China rivalry right now?
Well, I've been very open. Like I said, I've been in China for 40-some years, dating myself. Started when I was a teenager, of course.
Right now, Xi Jinping has a Make in China plan 2025, and they're making big investments in innovation for the future.
Sure they are. And China has decided to go it alone with a certain group of aligned partners. They've looked at it in a way that the U.S. will not be able to win. I encouraged all my startups not to invest in China, even though I did 30 years ago. And none of my 24 are heavily invested in China at all. Turned out to be a pretty wise decision in terms of the direction. Do I think the U.S. and China will eventually work on the issues and navigate through? Yes, I do. Do I think it's going to get tougher before it gets better? Personally, I do.
So it'll be tougher. In the next few months, we could see more tensions. This is
well, I don't look at the next couple of months. I look at what the next year and 2 years and 3 years. A word in business that I don't like, agility and flexibility. This is the year of agility and flexibility. Things are going to move quickly. You've got to be nimble. And you've got to realize that what looks like an obvious answer today might be different 2 to 3 months from now. Businesses and governments have to build a strategy in that period of uncertainty.
So do you think that will also be your advice to businesses? Be agile, be flexible in the current environment?
Exactly. That's what I've done. I've gone through that with all my 24 startups and worked through those very, very carefully. Same thing the day after terrorists were announced. I said, here's how we're going to have to adjust to them. I talk to the CEOs of large companies, board of directors all the time. Message is the same. Large companies have to act like small companies, much more nimble.
You know, John, during COVID, we saw a lesson around semiconductors.
Yes.
How China was dominating the supply chains and how vulnerable everyone was. Now we're seeing a similar situation play out with rare earth magnets. Mm-hmm. China has put a ban on export of rare earth magnets, and that can severely disrupt the manufacturing in the electric vehicle industry for that matter. What's the lesson in all of this, and how do you think India and US can overcome?
Well, the lessons in part is you've got to have a relationship with your trading partners that you're dependent upon, that you know have firm footing. Doesn't mean you're always going to agree like we talked earlier, but you know you're going to be able to navigate through the challenges together. On the rare earth metals, I think you'll see both the U.S. and India pursue what's needed to be able to ensure their supply on it, and we'll navigate through it. There are large rare earth metal reserves here in the U.S., as you're aware, and India has similar opportunities. So that's one we'll navigate through. But it goes back to your most basic principle. If I'm going to bet my economic future on you and my startups, which I'm doing on 60% of my startups are Indian diaspora, and I often do a lot of business together with India and the U.S., I've got to trust the people. I've got to have a relationship with them. There has to be the track record that they understand win-win and they know how to produce results. That's the countries and the companies I'm betting on.
Right. My final question to you,
Sure.
John, would be about when it comes to India right now
Yes.
and the India story, we are seeing a lot of hesitation in terms of deploying more capex, and this is because of uncertainties around trade. Are you seeing that in the US as well, when there is tariff uncertainty, when there are legal challenges to the tariffs being thrown, with the president saying that he's going to raise tariffs on steel and aluminum from 25 to 50%? Do you feel this is going to be a year of slow growth in the US, where companies are going to say, hey, we're going to hold back investments for the moment?
Well, I think anytime the more certainty in the market, even if it's uncomfortable certainty, the better markets can normally behave. When you're making major transformational changes, there's going to be disruption. I live in disruption. You form your best companies during periods of disruption. So you can look at it and say, boy, this is a challenge. I'm concerned. I'm just going to keep my hands in the pocket and on my back pocket, and I'm not going to spend. This is when I invest. This is when you catch market in transitions. This is when you realize who your true friends and allies are, and that's how you ought to think about the market. It's how I'm doing personally. I think it's the right thing for large companies. And again, I'm going to echo again and again, the U.S. and India together have almost unlimited opportunities. Everybody thought the projections we made 8 years ago, 6 years ago, 4 years ago, 2 years ago, and last year were almost unachievable, way too optimistic. Turned out we were too conservative. So am I the optimist of this relationship? Yeah, but I'm the optimist because of the fundamentals.
Yeah.
I think we completely control our futures together. Together we can do a lot more than either one of us by ourselves, and I think you'll see that mature.
All right. Thank you very much, John. Wonderful talking to you.
Always.
Summing up really what lies ahead for India and US in 2025 and beyond. Hopefully we'll have a strong deal, trade deal, which will open up many more investments.
We're going to have a trade deal. That's a given.
Of course, and that'll hopefully open up much more investments between the two countries as well.
Yeah, but you don't wait on a transaction. You move in parallel.
Yeah.
That's what well-run companies do. That's what well-run countries do. Watch at all the coordination on defense that's going on. Watch at all the health coordination. Watch all the education. There is not a state in the U.S. that doesn't have major delegations going to India, and I'm not aware of a state in India that doesn't have them going to the U.S. All these are going on in parallel. This is not a single key critical path. They have to go in parallel, and they are.
So you're saying you have a long-term bet on India, have a long-term bet on things.
Yeah.
Don't just think about a trade deal. It will happen, but think much beyond what the two countries can
What
do
does
together.
it really mean? And realize together we completely control our destinies.
All right. Wonderful note to end on. Thanks so much, John, for taking out time for us here
Always.
in Washington, D.C. So that was John Chambers in an exclusive conversation with CNBC-TV18 here in D.C., giving us his mantras, his big themes for 2025, and his advice to startups and large businesses about being agile and flexible in this current geopolitical environment. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.